there, I'm Joanna, and if you are here, chances are you already know that because I don't really use an alias for my YouTube channel. Just says my name. Alright, so I've been told a lot, that I am very interesting, and that's mostly from my doctors. But hopefully you'll find all this interesting. Now, I would do all my issues and conditions, disorders, whatever you want to call them all, in one video, but we would both be here forever. And neither of us want that. So, I wanted to do a video on sort of each of the big ones, I guess I'll call them. And then maybe do some other videos about some of the smaller conditions that I have. It's not that the condition themselves are small or uncomplicated or anything like that. It's just there's less to say about it. Right? Now, I am going to throw up a picture. And this is a tattoo. But this is a tattoo that I literally have on me right now. Figuring out cameras is hard. It's this way. There it is. Nope. Ah, this is a tattoo I have on me right now. I got this done earlier this year, and I was super excited to get it done because it is a tattoo that I've been wanting over a decade. Now, I'm glad I didn't get it done back then because the top one changed on me. And in this video, I'll be going through the top one. It is bipolar disorder. Now, I have been displaying bipolar-like symptoms since I was about 5 years old. My psychiatrist, the ones that can prescribe the pills, said likely what happened is because of early trauma in my life. It triggered bipolar disorder. But until the doctors see it themselves, they can't say for certain that's what it is, right? So they just say bipolar-like symptoms. And as I said, yes, I've been experiencing that since I was probably about 5 years old. And they finally diagnosed me with bipolar disorder. I believe it was now 4 years ago, which is somewhat late for a bipolar diagnosis. But because of some of the other issues that I have on my list, it causes it that I cannot correctly display my emotions, might be the way to say that. I was told, back in my 20s, after doing a very extensive psych evaluation, that I hide my emotions even from myself. And I think the problem is between number 2 and number 5, I think it is. The ADHD, you're constantly masking. And because of things that have caused the PTSD, I'm not able to take that mask off. It doesn't come off. And that's because of different issues in my childhood, things like the saying, children should be seen and not heard. Don't complain or I'll give you something to complain about. Things of that nature have made it impossible for me to completely remove my mask. And I can't get angry. Not that it doesn't happen, because believe me, it does. I can't get angry outside my home. Don't yell at people, don't raise my voice. I'm probably the sweetest, most kind person you would ever be around. And that is not quite how I am, or how the real me is. But I was never allowed to experiment with those type of emotions or feelings or anything out in public growing up. So that it's a mask I can't take off until. And I'm not going to say until I'm having a manic episode, which is probably what most people would be expecting. But no, I can have manic episodes and they'd never catch on that it was a manic episode. In fact, they didn't from the time that I was 25, which is when you usually get your bipolar disorder diagnostic, until 4 years ago. Because they didn't realize what they were seeing was mania. You know, you yell at one doctor, though. He hit a trigger he shouldn't have touched. But then they saw it. And finally, I was able to actually get the diagnosis of what it is I have. Because what I had been told I had was severe chronic depression, which occurred almost continuously. Hence the severe, right? Except when they felt I was getting better and I wasn't being depressed, I actually felt like I was getting worse and less in control of myself, and I would start to feel very uncomfortable. And it's because if you medicate for one side of it, but not the other, you're going to cause a manic episode. So when they started giving me medication for depression, I started going into the hospital for 2 weeks at a time or longer every 2 years. Because every 2 years they would need to change my medication because I'm not responding, is how they put it. Not responding. But mostly the problem was I would have a complete breakdown and be unable to do anything. And I mean anything. I couldn't cook, I couldn't clean, I couldn't take care of myself in any way. And that becomes an issue when you're a young parent. And when you're trying to work outside the home. So, it is what it is. It's one of those things. But finally, we have the diagnosis of bipolar disorder. And I like to refer to it as riding the pendulum. Because you have to stay centered all the time. That's the goal. They can't completely stop it from going from one side to the other. But you want to try and keep it as centered as possible. But I still have, I still have the bouts of depression. I mean, sadness will probably always be part of my life. Crushing and debilitating agony that is depression. And then there's the mania, which, as I said, on me is different than a lot of other people suffer. Um, and I think that's probably because of the past issues I have. And part of it is probably also the number 2 on that list, which is the ADHD. We'll go into that in a different vehicle, or in a different video. But, yeah, so my bipolar is a little different. And, I've had anger issues, we'll say, all my life. My mom used to say that I would go from being like the sweetest, most cuddly person, and in an instant, just a second later, I would be screaming and yelling and smashing things, and just life would be horrible for anybody around me. And she could never understand what was going on with me. And I couldn't explain it, either for the ADHD or literally any of the other reasons. I never could explain what was going on with me, or how I felt. And I would take these classes and workshops, and I went to counseling for all kinds of, we tried all kinds of different methods to deal with anger, because obviously I had a problem with anger. But nobody would see that, because that's not what anyone outside the home would ever see. But it's what my husband saw. Because I got married back in 2000. We've been married 21 years. This is us as babies getting married. You'll see my computer screen. This is us. He saw the rage. And people never understood what he was talking about, just like they never understood what my mother was talking about. And for years, he was living in an abusive, horrible household. It was so bad, he started drinking. And then he was able to finally move past that. Um, and yet, no matter what we tried, I could not get better or stay better when I was okay. You know, like I couldn't stay that way. It's like trying to grab sand. And it was the most frustrating thing ever. Because not only was I an abusive spouse, not only was he a battered spouse, but our children grew up in that. And they both have ramifications from that. Not just from what I had done or how I was behaving, but things that then caused. I'll give you an example. Um, because I was having issues and struggling, eventually the Child Protective Services were called, and, you know, among other things that they did, they brought my children, both of them, to see a pediatrician. He was a pediatrician, not just a general doctor. He was a specialist, so he knew what he was doing, right? And so I walk in there, and he knows why I'm there. He's supposed to look over my kids and say if there's any problems with them, because I'm obviously a horrible parent. Except our children were never neglected. They always had food. They always had the care they needed. Not that I was the one providing that care. That would have been my husband. So there was nothing wrong with our kids. And yet, the first thing he says, disrobe, down to your underwear. And he looks them up and down and says they're horribly malnourished. This is appalling. They're atrocious. Look at these children. Look how horrible they look. Can you believe what this looks like? And he went on for probably about a half hour, bad-mouthing my kids and how they looked and what their bodies were like. Until I finally snapped at him and I said, if you think there is a problem with what my children look like, if you think that they are too thin, if you think that there's something horribly, horribly wrong with what is going on here, I said, talk to their doctor. It's a weird concept, right? But talk to their doctor. Because my children were always in like the 1% on the growth scale. Because I'm 5'1", right? My mother is 5'2". My husband's mother is 4'8", I believe, somewhere around there. Under the 5-foot mark, but just barely. She can wear heels. And, our fathers are both, they're not above 6 feet. They're below 6 feet. Both our fathers. Their dad, my children's dad, my husband, he's, I believe, 5'5", right? We are not tall people. We did not get the tall genetics. And we certainly did not pass on any genetics for being fucking tall. And my husband has always been very thin. Incredibly thin. To the point where after we got married, I had to call his mom and I said, where do you buy his pants? Because I can't seem to find any pants that fit him. And she said, you're in the wrong section. You have to go to the boys' section, not the men's. Because he was that thin. Right? So it's this is what my kids are working with. My father, while he was, in his younger years, was very, very thin. My sister is very, very thin. Even now, she's very thin, right? We've both inherited the genes to have the long, lean, thin physique, like a swimmer's physique, right? You're not unhealthy looking. You're just very, right? And that's what my kids inherited. That's what's in their genetics. And that's what that doctor was saying was ugly and disgusting, and they're doing something horribly wrong. To this day, both of my children have struggled with issues with food. Both of them have severe body image issues. And one of them has not taken off his clothes for a professional since. He won't take his clothes off for anybody. Us, his closest family, would not see him walking around in his underwear. That doctor could not prove that we were doing anything wrong. But what he did do is have eternal effects on the mental health of both my children and with their body image. And it's my fault. Which I know probably doesn't sound right. But if I wasn't having issues with my mental health, the protective services would not have been called, and they would not have been brought there, and all their doctors' interactions would have remained positive. I have a son with severe anxiety who cannot speak to medical professionals. He's on medication now. but it's very limited what you can do as an outsider to get somebody medicated without them hearing at least a few words from the person who's experiencing this. Right? So I do blame myself, which I'm sure probably causes other issues. However, I digress. So you medicate for one, the other, no good. Right? If I take pills designed to bring me up, I will go up through the roof. I cannot be on antidepressants. And that's what I was put on. And I was probably put on the worst kinds of antidepressants that are out there. Because I'll tell you one side effect of the antidepressants that I was on for over a decade. Severe weight gain. Severe weight gain. And they could put you on things like different medications to make you feel full, right? Or to prevent you from eating too much, right? Like I was on medications that were designed to like flush most of the fat out of your system, but you had to eat a certain amount of fat. I had to increase my fat intake to take these pills that are supposed to flush away fat from my system. That's how smart my doctors were. So they gave me ones that got severe weight gain. Severe weight gain. And I went from, let's see, I would have been about 150 pounds to when the time they took me off of the antidepressants in general, I was over 300. And that's just one condition, one of my conditions that we're fighting with. So obviously weight becomes an issue. But like that's one side effect. And there are so many different side effects of these things. And they weren't effective. And it kills me that because they weren't listening to my spouse. And they didn't listen to my parents. And I even had the doctors, when I was hospitalized the first time at 25, talk to not only my husband, but my mother. Because she was the parent who experienced it. You know, they were like, nah, we don't see that. So they missed the mania. So, according to documentation, I have had exactly one manic episode, and what it was I yelled at a doctor. Because my son, who can't speak to doctors, and needed to be put on anxiety medication, and that's not even the bone I was going after that day, lives with severe chronic pain. It's improved recently, but he lives with chronic pain as a teenager, and mine started when I was young, my chronic pain, because that's something else I have. So I wanted to get this looked at. So what they did is they took him and they wrote him up the requisition, right? So I had to go to the doctor, which he doesn't like. I had to take him to the doctor, get them to write up the requisition. Then I had to take him and go get a blood test done so they could check to see if he had increased levels of something or other in his blood. I think it was for some type of juvenile arthritis, right? So I had to take him down there, get the blood test done. Then I had to wait long enough and then come back. Now, mind you, because no doctors are ever accepting patients, we had to go to a walk-in clinic. And I had to gamble every time I stepped through that door because there was one particular idiot, and I will call him an idiot. I didn't like dealing with him because the first time I met him, he looked me dead in the eyes and he said ADHD does not exist in adults. ADHD. Which is not a learning disability as far as he was concerned, right? Like, he's like, no, that's a learning disability. That only occurs in children. And I was like, no, it is a neurological disorder. It is very similar to autism, and you don't grow out of it. But anyway, so I had to deal with that doctor that day. That doctor, who's just a gold mine. And I said, we are here to find out the results of my son's blood test. They called, they said it was in. I just had to come down to talk to the doctor. And do you know what he told me? After I've dragged my son, who cannot stand to be around medical professionals, who was literally standing in the corner facing the doctor because he's too scared to even just face the corner, right? And he's shaking. He looked at me and he's like, I don't feel like going and looking at that file. You'll have to come another day. So I told him that he should get off his ass and do his job. And that, my friends, is the manic episode. The dangerous outburst that got me hospitalized for 3 weeks. Told him to do his damn job. But because of that, and they could see that I got angry irrationally, and then was displaying like psychotic symptoms, which is kind of what happens when you take away all my medication for over 48 hours. Because I've been on it for so long. And I was on a variety of medications. Like, they're like, obviously this is a manic episode. And it's like, sweetie, I can tell you what my manic episodes are like. And that ain't it. That, I will say, was brought on by quite a bit of cannabis use. And it's not that I was impaired or that it triggered the manic episode. It was that I no longer gave a fuck and could get over the issues I have that, that caused me to not speak my mind and not, call somebody out. So, that being said, if you have bipolar disorder, do not use cannabis because they can cause manic episodes. It is very difficult to find a naturally balanced cannabis. But, teach your own, and only if it's legal. Right? I, myself, am in Canada. I am in BC. I was able to just walk into a store and buy it. So, and I was on that for the chronic pain. But yeah, so they blamed the cannabis causing a manic episode. Now, as I said, that's not how I experience mania. That's because I've been experiencing it all my life. I know what mania is. Okay? And for me, some of the bigger, oh crap, we could have a problem here, are things like severely increased sex drive and severely decreased, can't remember the exact term for it now, but it's basically your give a fuck factor. It's what makes you not do things that are bad, right? Like, Yeah, so severe impulsivity. And these are all ADHD issues. But what it is my list of things that make up me um, on my warning label here, they play off of each other. So when I'm having a manic episode, I am having severe problems with my ADHD. I am having executive dysfunction so bad I can't tell you what my name is or where I live or anything like that. It's like a really bad case of dementia because I remember back in a previous home that we lived in many, many years ago now. Uh, I went for a walk with a dog, with our dog, right? The one that we had at the time. His name was Odin. And I was walking on our block, and I figure I got about halfway. And then didn't, I lost everything. Literally everything. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know where I lived. I didn't know, you know, I didn't know anything. I knew that I was walking this dog. I didn't know what his name was, but I knew I was walking this dog. And I said to the dog, I said, "Do you know where home is?" He heard the word home, which is something I've had been trying to teach him for years as a type of recall. You hear that, go home, because he was the kind of dog who would just bolt. So I tell him, home. When I said home, dog brought me home. And I was like, Jesus, I hope this is the right house. Right? So like I opened the door and like he goes running in, charging in on the leash. And I opened the door and I'm like, "Hello?" And my husband says, "Oh, hey, you're back." And my brain worked. Knew exactly who I was. But after that, I was like, I should do something. Right? So for me, manic deck, or like, yeah, manic deck, um, that's this type of thing that I start getting. It's like, basically, like I have the ADHD um, symptoms, but they go through the roof and just like, and then I have other issues. Start hearing things, which is annoying because I've already got very sensitive hearing. You know, all my senses are very, very sensitive, very, very on edge all the time, and that's common with the ADHD. But yeah, so I start hearing things, but I can't tell if I'm hearing things or if there's just a new sound because I can't get my brain to focus on it long enough to really say for sure what I heard, you know? So it's like, but I'm hearing things, right? And then sometimes I'll start to see things just out of the corner of my eye. And it's like, is there a mouse in the house? Or am I experiencing hallucinations? You know, like, you're like, I'm seeing something moving around, right? And there's just so much that you start second guessing it. And you're going, maybe it's not, like, maybe it's not manic, right? Maybe it's something else. It could be a different issue. There were many times where I was like, I see something. I see something moving around. And then you find out, like, there's actually a mouse in the house. Because where we live is particularly rocky. So they like to find warm places. So when I Googled it, uh, the provincial website actually recommends that everybody on the island have cats to avoid the mice. I was like, oh, all right. So it's something that happens. And you wonder, and you explain it away. And you're like gaslighting yourself. It's like, nah, I'm still good. And then I'll have big things, like a little while ago. My husband, he was getting out of bed. He was going to be getting ready for work. So he stands up off the bed and created a tidal wave so hard and powerful that I almost got like swept off the bed. Now there's several things wrong with that. First off, if he stands up, the wave is no. He'd have to sit down for there to be a wave. And then there's the fact that it's not a waterbed, and there is literally no way to create a wave in the bed. But there I was, holding the side of the bed, and I screamed. And my husband's like, "What are you doing? It's like 4 a.m., right?" He's like, "What's going on? Are you okay?" And I was like, that is a hallucination and a delusion, and that is definitely a big flag that I'm in a manic episode, or that I'm having, or going to be having a manic episode, 'cause sometimes it builds up, right? It's a nice swing. And when I'm lying in bed and I literally see things crawling up the wall and moving around, and it's not just in one spot, but it's all the walls are moving and swirling, and it looks like I am now stuck in one of those psychedelic paintings. That you can't lie to yourself about. You're like, okay, either somebody has drugged me badly, just like massive amount of a bad drug, or my brain is being a jerk. Because that's what I usually call it. My brain is being a jerk. So, fun times. Like, those are the kinds of ways that I experience the bipolar. I don't get violent, right? I don't. I don't start, like, picking fights or anything like that normally. I do start having, like, more arguments at home. I am a lot quicker to anger at home. With my oldest especially, like, I will yell at him because he will yell back, and in my brain that means that it's like an accepted communication. Right? Because if I yell, you yell back. This is an accepted communication. We are now having communication at this particular volume, and that's just how we're going, because that's how my brain works. But yeah, so like these people got to deal with me. But out there, they don't have to deal with most of the stuff. But I will say, with the bipolar disorder, all these conditions that I have will play off of each other. The bipolar disorder makes the ADHD worse, or the ADHD might make the bipolar worse, you know? And then they bring on the anxiety, bring on panic attacks, the PTSD problems also go right in there. They all feed off of each other. And so if I'm not doing well on any side of the swing of the pendulum, I'm not doing well with all those things because they feed and they breed off of each other. Now, something worth stating. If you have bipolar disorder and, or you suspect you might have bipolar disorder and you have ADHD, like diagnosed, they're giving you medication. An important thing to know is when you have bipolar, you cannot take most of the ADHD medications because it can trigger a, a mania, right? Because most of them are stimulants and they will send you over. Now, I got diagnosed with ADHD as a younger child, right? I was in grade 4 at the time. They thought I couldn't read, so they thought maybe I was dyslexic. So they sent me for learning disorder testing, and surprise, I have ADHD. So they started medicating me for that back then, and as I said, I started exhibiting bipolar like episodes and symptoms back when I was like 5. So when they started medicating me for the ADHD, I would get angry and violent. Only at home. Not to the doctors. You do something like that with the doctor, they either send you to the insane asylum, or they put you in a straitjacket, or they take you away and put you with foster families, and most foster families are bad. If you listen to my father. Which I can't stop. So, like, it's not, I just can't. I can't. Especially not in front of medical professionals. But that's just one of the many people in authority traumas that I have that will always be fun to explain why I can't talk to you. You should hear me about my police. It's not them, it's everybody who's been around them and used them. Still triggers the PTSD just as bad. But anyway, so fun times. Those are some things about bipolar disorder, how it affects me specifically. So, I mean, any questions, any comments, I can definitely try and get back to you and, answer anything. But as I said, I have a complex list of different disorders that play off of each other, and they intermingle and they make it difficult to treat each other at times. So the way I experience things may not be the same as everybody else, but I find with most things it's going to vary from person to person. So my experience is not necessarily going to be your experience, but hopefully I have informed you a little bit about bipolar disorder and one of the many, many reasons why I may not seem too sociable at times. you know. Also, if you have, where is it? The angle of the camera is weird. Okay, if you have like some of these complex mental health issues, I think it's better to make it known in some fashion. I'm not saying everybody should go out and get all their mental disorders tattooed on their skin, but I lose things. I misplace them. I forget to put them on. And so even if I wanted to wear the 6 different medical alert bracelets, I wouldn't remember them. So, but it is good to make it known in some way so that if you are ever experiencing either a manic episode or anything else that debilitates or incapacitates you. Like, this is just the list of things that will shut me down completely and make me unable to communicate. I have more health issues, but like, this is the ones that shut me down and make me unable to communicate. And so if you have something like that, I would definitely suggest that you advertise it in some way. Have it on a card in your wallet or something like that. But for me, it it bothered me for 15 years. It'd been bothering me because people who are having a mental health crisis and experience the police, which I said I've already got some issues with, not that it's their fault, but if they come in contact with the police, ultimately they have to protect their lives as well. And if they don't understand what you're doing, or if they don't understand what's going on, and if they feel threatened, there's a large number of people who have bipolar or ADHD, other uh, neurodiverse conditions, right? Autism. Like, there are a large number of people who have been killed by police instead of helped, or people in mental health crises who have been killed by police instead of helped because they don't understand what's going on and they can't help you. So for my own peace of mind, I got it tattooed on my arm. It's literally tattooed on my arm, right? Like, if you see me and you say, I didn't know, right? That's bull. Because if I'm out there and I'm having severe executive dysfunction to the point where I'm literally stopped, not moving, not blinking, hardly breathing, or not breathing at all, right? Just complete screensaver. I want you to know what is going on, so I have it written on me. I don't want to be one of the statistics of this person was in a mental health crisis and was killed by police. And I do not blame the police. I understand completely. But for my own safety, I have it written on my arm. And if I am out of the house, I am like this. I will always either have short sleeves on or have my sleeves rolled up. And it could be dead of winter. It could be -50 out there. I would still want to have my arms exposed. Because I always want my tattoo to be visible. I will wear them down if I'm with my husband, or if I'm with a different trusted caregiver, I like to call them. Somebody who can speak on my behalf. But, yeah, if you see me out there, I've got my sleeves up. Because I feel like having the tattoo protects me somehow. Or at the very least, it makes a very arguable point. Right? Because if you encounter a person, a short, 5'1", female, like short, female, white, because that seems to matter in some places. Like, if you encounter that having a mental health crisis, who literally has it written on their flesh, this is what's wrong with me, and you still shoot me, I like to think that there would be some kind of media shitstorm. Because I can be awfully cute, and everybody loves me because I'm always cheerful. Because I can't not be. But yeah, so just for your own safety, maybe put it somewhere just so they know. Because even if your conditions have any mental health condition, if your conditions have never shut you down to the point where you can't communicate before in the past, does not mean that that won't happen in the future. right? Uh, so yeah, just have it somewhere. It's like having a list of medications in your wallet, something I keep not doing since the last card wore out, but it's good to have in case you ever go to the hospital or need to talk to a doctor or, you know, whatever it is that you might need it. It's good to have the reference. Like when you go to the pharmacist and get a new vitamin and then realize perhaps they mess with some of your medications and you have to ask. But that pharmacist isn't your pharmacist, so they don't know what medications are on. You know, it's good to have. It's good to have. It's one of those things that it's good to have for anybody who has like some sort of medical condition, right? So, definitely when comfortable, you know, take precautions for yourself to, just in case, right? Because better safe than sorry.